Coming now, it's time, though, for our great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, should MPs be banned from having second jobs? Former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng and former Health Secretary Matt Hancock have been caught in a sting operation after agreeing to work for £1,000 a day for a fake Korean firm. Now, that's not to mention other senior politicians, including Sir Graham Brady, who also attended another meeting with the fake firm, saying he would accept a rate of about £6,000 a day. Now, proponents would argue that these politicians have complied with all the rules and that they've acknowledged the importance of their work in respective constituencies. And under the current rules, politicians are not ministers, are allowed to take on second jobs. So what do you think? I mean, last year, around 260 MPs earned money from extra work outside Parliament. A lot of critics, including some Labour MPs, have dubbed the move shameful, particularly during a cost of living crisis. But what do you think? So for the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, should MPs be banned from having a second job? I'm joined now by former leader of UKIP, Neil Hamilton, former Labour MP, Stephen Pound, and former and political commentator, Lettice Bromovsky. Right, I'm going to start with you, Neil, as you're in the studio with me. Neil, what do you think then? Should they be allowed to have second jobs?
Well, can I say, first of all, I'm still the leader of UKIP, not the former leader.
Did it say that?
Well, I think it's no bad thing for MPs to have a foot in the real world for one day a week or so. But it all depends on what it is that they're doing. The sort of arrangement which we read about in the papers today doesn't seem to me like anything to do with the real world at all, not least because the company that they were so happy to take money from doesn't exist. But if you've got a family business, for example, you get elected as an MP, I see nothing wrong with you continuing to keep your hand in with that. Many MPs have done that, including Michael Heseltine, for example. In the past, he built up Haymarket Press, massive company now. He was the chairman of it when he was a backbencher. Also, there are MPs who are professionals. Paul Beresford, a London MP, was a dentist, and he still carried on his practice on a Friday, I think. And when I was in the Welsh Parliament, we had a Plaid Cymru member who was a GP, and he carried on being a GP on Fridays. I think that sort of thing is very good, because MPs do need to experience the real world. Just a parliament full of career politicians doesn't seem to me to be the way forward at all. I mean, people are always complaining that MPs have no idea what's going on in the real world outside the Westminster bubble.
But they have got constituents. They've got a lot of constituents, and some would say that actually that's drawing attention away from the job they should be doing. Stephen?
I'm sorry, I utterly and totally disagree, but Neil, I apologise for this. That's absolute nonsense on stilts. Look, if you really want to stay in touch with the real world, by all means, volunteer, go and work down in your food bank, do whatever you want, but don't take money for it. As far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely simple. If you're spending 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a week, filling your boots on a consultancy somewhere, you are not serving your constituents. You'd have to be a superhuman to be able to do 2 or 3 jobs at once. And most MPs, in my experience, including myself, are very far from superhuman. So look, by all means, let's get people who've got experience of the real world. I was a hospital porter for years. I was on the buses. I was in the Navy. And then come into Parliament. Once you're in Parliament, you get a damn good wage. It's indoor work, no heavy lifting, and you're there to serve your constituents, not to fill your boots. As far as I'm concerned, if you're a doctor or a dentist like Paul down in Surrey that Neil just mentioned, by all means, keep up to date with your professional qualifications, but don't take money for it. If you're going to take money for outside earnings, then they should deduct that from your salary so that we're all on the same, and then we all have some reality and some not. We don't have this ridiculous business where certain MPs are earning millions a year, particularly in the legal profession.
Lettice, what do you think?
I think, well, one of the main points there is that I don't think MPs are even nearly paid enough. Yes, it is sort of higher than the average British wage, but this is simply not an average British job. We're looking to get the top people into these positions, not just your average worker. So they should always be paid more. And frankly, this salary is low, even compared to other public sector jobs, particularly medical consultants or even experienced head teachers are going to be paid more than this. We know from surveys taken in the 2010 intake that a lot of MPs who came in actually had to take a salary cut of around £30,000. And we want a diverse set of MPs from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So if you're the breadwinner of your family coming into this position, you might not be able to take up that position if you are taking a loss of income. And instead, we might only be getting MPs who have inherited wealth or perhaps have that banker background or very high paying background. That's just narrowing the talent pool that we have.
Can I
I
say,
do think that
Stephen, you need to put the light back on. You've gone dark out there. Lettice, can I just say that Lettice, I need to come back to you on that then. Okay, so the 84,000 isn't the only amount that they get. So with respect, they also have expenses. Some of them get second home allowances. I mean, the full salary package for some of them is around about 120,000 at least. So bear in mind that 84,000 is probably more like a take-home amount. So I think we need to factor that in. And also there is the privilege of being an MP where you get other benefits in kind, in a sense, although you have to declare them, but you still get other benefits. So actually, I don't think, and I think a lot of people would argue with you that £84,000 isn't a lot of money. Neil, because I saw you nodding.
Of course.
I think that the jobs.
I find myself in the rather unusual position of being the man in the middle here between the two extremes. Certainly 84,000 a year is a very large sum of money to most people. I mean, the average wage in this country is just over 30,000. So, of course, 84,000 is way up at the top end of what people are earning. But I do think that there is much to be said for MPs being able to use some of their time to do other things, so long as they're legitimate businesses, not just PR fronts or lobbying organisations. After all, if you are a small businessman and you go into Parliament, why shouldn't you continue for a few hours a week to have a role in that business? If you're a practising profession, you need to keep up to date. If you're seeing clients, and if you're a lawyer or indeed a doctor for that matter, then you're able to find out what's happening in the real world in a way you can't do just as an MP. Maybe even in your surgery.
Let's get Stephen in.
I do think that I'm not against debating the MP's salary for.
No, let's get
time
Stephen in.
spent,
Neil, Stephen.
Listen, the reality about this is, Charles Kennedy once said to me, so the difficult bit about being an MP is that you've got to ride three horses at once. You know, you've got your personal, your professional, your constituency work. But then he said, if you can't ride three horses at once, you shouldn't be in the circus. Well, as far as I'm concerned, in all honesty, it is a decent wage. I don't think that we should be encouraging people to come into Parliament, you know, just to better themselves. I think in some ways there's a case to be made for limited terms. If you're going to do, I mean, I did 22 years. That's probably, you know, as long as a person should do. But look, in all honesty, you either serve your constituents or you serve yourself. And when you become a member of Parliament, it is an immense privilege. It's an incredible privilege. It causes huge pain. It puts pressure on your family. And I actually took a pay cut, amazingly, when I became an MP in 1997. But that's not the point. I was there for public service. And if I want to keep in touch with the real world, I live in my constituency. I walk up and down the road there. My kids go to the local school. I am in the real world. I don't need to actually trouser a few grand a year to make myself know what the real world is. I was approached when I was.
I could let us the final word here. Lettice, you talked about the money and that it wasn't enough and everything else like that. But Stephen makes a very good point, and it shouldn't be about the money anyway. A job like that. I mean, it's like you talked about nurses don't get paid like that. Those are serious jobs. They would be listening to you thinking, "What? 84 grand isn't enough."
No, well, 100%. And I think that you are right. You know, the primary source of income, your primary job should always be your constituents and representing them. And I think one other main issue is that trust has been so damaged in recent years between politicians and their constituencies that transparency needs to be just 100% on these issues. Otherwise, we're going to run into more issues like Owen Paterson, like Geoffrey Cox, who is abusing the rules and abusing the powers to not be in his constituency. That is your primary responsibility, and anything other than that should be a secondary role. But I do think that there is benefits to committees and informing debates from having other jobs within your constituency and being on the ground there.
Financially, for sure. Well, listen, thank you so much for your thoughts. Neil Hamilton, leader of UKIP. Stephen Pound, former Labour MP. Lettice Bromovsky, thank you very much for joining me. She's a political commentator.